Good day, everyone. My name's Mike LaCorte, and welcome to another episode of Leaders. Leaders Podcast is a podcast where we interview senior leaders in the investigation and intelligence industry from around the world. Today, I'm joined by Matthias Willenbrink, a highly experienced investigator with over 45 years of being in this industry. Matthias started his career with the German police in 1980. He'd done a whole range of investigation work in the police, and we're going to hear a bit about Matthias's background and then he transitioned into the private sector and utilized his skills there too. Matthias, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Briefly introduce yourself to everyone that's listening.
Hello, good day to everybody, and many thanks for inviting me to this format, which is, I feel, really interesting. Yeah, so I'm now in the industry for 45 years. I started in the police. I love police work, I have to say. I was a long time a police detective. However, if you work in civil service, then everything is narrow. Your responsibility is limited, and you always need to ask some supervisors, and very often they do not make the best decisions. And at a certain point, I was a little frustrated, and I got a good offer, which led me into the private investigation industry. And so I finally decided in the age of 30 years, I'm going for private investigation. To be honest, if I would have known what I do not knew that time, I would not be brave enough to do it because it was a long trip. You have to learn so many things because the public sector and private sector is pretty much different. And you need to be, much more broad-minded. You need to be interested for many new things and learn so many new things to make a real good career in private investigation. However, my advantage was I was young enough. So I was just 30 years. And if you are 30, you are still able to learn and you are interested for many things. And that brought me to a very good starting position where I could start into this industry.
Fantastic. So in the early 90s, right? So you set up in Berlin, a private sector investigation company in Berlin?
No, not in Berlin, in Hanover. This is where I'm currently.
Okay.
I live in Berlin. That's true. I have a family. I have 4 kids. I live in Berlin since 2006, and I love the city. Berlin, by the way, is as well the capital of fraud in Germany, so we have so many work to do over there. So I spend most of my time in Berlin. However, currently I just in our headquarters in Hanover, which is the city where I used to serve as policeman a long time. And so to say my second home, but I'm not very often here.
Right, understood. And then, so you developed a private sector career in Germany, coming straight out of the police. How did you find that? What were the changes and the challenges for you?
The biggest challenge, of course, is you need to be much more creative because you do not no longer have a card which shows I'm the police and you have to say something to me. To be honest, I learned over the time it's rather an advantage not to be a policeman, because if you are a policeman, you always have you end up in a difficult psychological situation where your opposite party you are going to interview perceive you as a man in a position of power, and psychological wise that is not good. If you are a private investigator, you do not have any rights, no special power, and this is rather an advantage, but a disadvantage if you know how to deal with that. And that is definitely what you need to learn. Communication, because most of my work, I'm mostly in counter fraud services for the insurance industry. Most of our work is speaking to people. So it's all about communication, and the communication you do as a PI with a witness or any other kind of person, or even with a suspect, this is quite different to that what you do as a policeman. And that is mostly the biggest difference you need to learn.
Yeah, that's quite a skill, actually, to be honest. And you bring that a good point in using the private sector without the authority power to communicate with individuals, witnesses, suspects. That's a good point. What about the other side, Matthias? How do the police in Germany perceive private sector investigators? Is the relationship good? Do you collaborate? Is there opportunities, or is the relationship not so good?
Mostly it's really good, because in my daily work, I would say we cooperate with police nearly on a daily basis, because whenever we are involved in insurance fraud cases, it's always, or mostly it's an arson case. I myself do a lot of arson cases, and in these cases, always the police is involved. And we have the big advantage here in Germany. You can investigate cases, criminal cases, even if the police is going for the same cases. There are some countries where this is prohibited. However, in Germany, it's okay. And very often the police is really happy if, and that is a big if they realize that the other side is qualified. And that is basically the thing. Of course, at the very beginning, any kind of civil services are rather suspicious about our profession. And this is quite understandable because there is no education. So from the legal perspective, our profession in Germany does not exist at all. If you look into all German laws, you will never find any law which addresses private investigation. Law-wise, we do not exist. Nobody thinks about the industry. Nobody knows the industry. And that, of course, results in a beginning skepticism. However, if you are able to give the impression that you know what you're talking about, then it's mostly very easy and police is happy to cooperate with you. Very often I do the police work. I look for the witnesses. When I found the right person, then I do the interviews and then I call the police. I say, look, guys, this is a guy you need to speak to. Forget the others. This is a waste of time. I have already spoken to that guys, but this guy is good. And then they are happy that I get away from them a lot of work and pointing them into the right direction. And that's what they really love. The trick is how to convince police that you are qualified. And in my company, I'm the only policeman. However, my colleagues, I teach them, we have a course which we name police wording. And I teach my colleagues to use special terms police is using. And if you use the terms, they automatically perceive you as competent. So that is something what I train to the non-policemen, to giving or making them able to give the impression, look, I know what I'm talking about. I know you are, and of course I explain my colleagues the role and position of a police detective, the limits, all the limitations he has to deal with, technical-wise, responsibility-wise, which is a big issue because policemen are always just responsible for an area. And very often our suspects cross the areas. And whenever that happens, the policeman is no longer responsible. And if he needs to interview, let's say, an important witness far away, then he needs to send over his file to one of his colleagues in a complete different area. Mostly these colleagues are not really interested in the case, and the quality of work they get back from their colleagues mostly rather low. And this is, of course, frustrating. And we are much more flexible. If I have a certain suspect, even if it's not in Germany, if it's somewhere else, I can call my colleagues from WRD to help me, or if it's a really complex case, I might even go myself. So we are much more flexible. Our speed to action is much faster than that of police. And that is sometimes even quite impressive for the police. For example, if I can remember a matter where I worked together with police and it was about checking whether a certain German guy has some kind of address and real estate property in Miami. And I told you, this is no problem. I get you that information tomorrow morning. And they were deeply impressed. And in practical terms, you can dig it out in a database. This is something what they do not have, which I do not know. And legal-wise, as soon as they cross any country border, then they get issues. And even in Europe, everybody talks about OLAF, which is a European police, or which the European Common Jurisdiction Area. If it comes to criminal investigation, forget it. It's a very low level. As soon the perpetrators are crossing the national borders in Europe, they are in a really good position because that makes everything much slower. And that is our big chance because we are not slow. We have our network all over Europe, even all over the world. And that is a big advantage we have. And very often we can help the police with that advantages, and they are quite happy about it.
That's good that the German police are receptive to work. It helps both sides, right? You talked about colleagues,
Yeah.
collaboration, network, assistance in another country, and you said WAD. Tell us a little bit about your journey with associations, why you got involved.
I would even say WAD was the most important part of my professional life. And the reason is, as I started my career as PI in '93, I was involved into a national association, which was quite good to have a national network. But there was a guy, former past president of WAD, Werner Sachse, who was the first WAD president from Germany in '99, I guess. And he approached me in '98 and said, look, Matthias, you need to join WAD. And I was completely reluctant. I said, no, why should I do with this? I'm a German PI. I have German clients. I have not a single relation to anybody outside of Germany. And by the way, I'm not really able to speak good English. So no, I will not do. And he pushed me so hard that I gave finally up. And I would say my joining of WD was not really voluntary because I wanted to get rid of the calls from Werner. And so I signed and then I thought, okay, I'm now happy he will no longer call me. And he continued to call and told me, look, you need to join the meeting, which was '99 in Chicago. That was when he was inaugurated as president. And I was resistant. I said, no, I can't talk to people. My English is so rudimentary. I will not do that. However, he's called and called again. So I went to Chicago. That was by the way, the first time when I was ever overseas in 19 And I was so deeply impressed by seeing these people and realizing there were people who had close friends all over the world. They spoke to guys from Malaysia, from all over the world, and you could see they know each other, they are friends to each other, and they help each other. And that was so deeply impressive for me to see, wow, this is such a big world, and these guys obviously know everybody, or at least somebody everywhere. And that was, I was deeply impressed. And the warm welcomeship, the people addressing me, obviously realizing I was a complete greenhorn, had no idea. And they approached me. That was Richard Sachs-Turner and Maureen. They came to me. I was obviously the new kid on the block, and they did everything they could to introduce me to the other guys. And that was so deeply impressing. This first event in Chicago in '99 was so deeply impressing that on the way back home, I made two decisions. The first was, you should learn a little more English. The second was, you should scope your mind over the border into the international world. Both of these decisions were vital for me to spread my business, and which resulted over the years that we were the very best connected agency in Germany if it comes to international investigation. And we are still today very much in front, and that everything I owe to WRD, and personally I owe it to Werner Sachse. And of course, if somebody would have told me in '99 that I would be the president of this prestigious association 17 years later, I would say, you're a complete idiot. This is not going to happen. However, it happened. And it happened, I would say, on a way which was not in my control. I never intended to do that. However, of course, somebody asked me, I guess it was 2005 or so, would you take over the position of the EMEA area governor? So I did so. And that time was in the mid-2000s, when you could see that time the evaluation of detectives was a good international association, no question about that. However, the coverage was not as good. You had, I guess, 400 members in America. We had the second biggest country was UK at that time, I guess 70 members or so. Germany had 50, Spain had some. So it was like the G7 states, I would say. The powerful countries had a good membership. However, we had a very few, or mostly a total lack of members in the new Eastern Territory countries. And I took that as my personal responsibility, and I developed pretty much a membership in EMEA with help like people from like Maria Bombaru, for example, from Romania. We got it managed over a couple of years. We had 20 members from Romania, which was quite impressive for such a small country. And I acquired members from Poland, from Czech Republic. So European, so the membership was more spread. And like other guys, Vladimir Zalumardinin, for example, he explored Russia to a very good extent, or Kumar Vikram Singh, who explored India. I guess we had 90 or even 100 members. I can't remember where some skeptical American colleagues who mentioned, okay, we are becoming an Indian association because Kumar was so good in acquiring new members. And that developed, and we had so many motivated members, and most of them later became president, like myself, who donated their time to explore membership. And if you now look into the world map of WD, you would realize we are a real international, worldwide investigation or association. Of course, we still have some lack in Africa, some lack in South America. We always tried. I can remember we had the meeting in Rio, so we did something to more develop. We have some members, however, the coverage in Africa and South America is still not as good. However, the rest of the world, I would say, is really well covered. And that is due to the work of all these colleagues who spent their time to develop World Association of Detectives. And that, of course, if you do that, then I have no idea. I get voted to the board in 2007 or so. And sometimes I was completely surprised when somebody nominated me as third vice president. It was absolutely not expected. And so, of course, you can't neglect certain kinds of invitations. And so my career started. I went through the ranks up to the president, and it was a fantastic experience. And business-wise, very often, if I try to convince people or colleagues to join WD, then they are asking me, what will I get back if I join WD? And then I always say, look, it's not a money machine. It's not subscribe something and everything goes from its own. That's not the matter. As more you put in, as more you get out. No. As simple it is. And this is what I always try to explain my young colleagues exactly, because our challenge is we need more young colleagues. I have to realize I'm 61 years old now, so I'm rather belonging to the outgoing generation. This is quite clear. So we need some more young guys, like Mihai from Romania, for example, is a young colleague, highly motivated. He is pretty much in the situation I used to be 30 years ago. And I feel my responsibility to contribute my experience and trying to be the mentor of young people, like Werner was for me. Werner forced me for my success. I was completely reluctant, did not realize. Nowadays, I know this guy was absolutely right, and he did so good to me, and that is what brings me in the position to see, okay, I definitely need to give something back to the industry, to young people, and that's why I really love to convince young people and telling them my story and say, look, simply start. Forget all your skepticism. You might not be able to communicate in English perfect. I wasn't either. So where's the problem? So everything what you feel is a reason not to join is not true. You should simply join, and the time will prove you that you are on the right way as long you put something in. You always should try to put something in. And it starts on, let's say, the most powerful tool which I feel is our list server, the WD list server, which is such a fantastic thing. Whenever you have a case, I had cases in Togo, even in Iran, so in really strange cases or areas and countries. And whenever I had an issue, I posted an email, and within mostly 1 hour, you get at least 3 replies of colleagues who had some experience, who put you into the right direction. And that is so fantastic. It's so deeply impressing how good this community works. of course, it's a little to your influence. If you join, if somebody asks for a tip and you contribute your knowledge, of course, people recall your name and they are more motivated to help you. So it's a mutual thing. You put something in, you get something out. That is very simple.
Going back to the younger investigator, and great, you were very lucky that you had a very senior mentor to guide you and force you into this international world. What about the younger guys that, because times have changed since 20, 30 years ago till now, the way we communicate, how globalization's taken over. How about the younger guys that are, getting into the industry now? What advice would you give them? Because they may not be lucky enough to have a mentor pushing them in one direction, and there's so much out there at the moment. What advice would you give the younger investigator that's looking to come into the industry?
The first is, of course, develop your networks, and the World Association of Detectives is one really powerful tool you can use, because you always find people in WRD who want to help you, who have the experience, you have the specialties in different types of work. So this networking is a vital thing. And always do it on an international level, because in these modern times, I would say, I guess, about a third of all my cases have some kind of international relations. So you can't do this job with no international relations. And even that, in 2000, I went to all my insurance clients and told them, look, I'm really good in international relations, so I can do international cases. And they said, oh, yeah, look, they were as stupid as I was. They said, we are German insurance, we have German clients, so we do not need any international capacities. That is completely wrong. And nowadays, they all realized we have so many insurance claims with international relations, and this is not ending. So being on an international level is of vital importance. Having good network is of vital importance, and of course spending some money to keep the network. It's not ending in just subscribing. You need to meet the people, and of course especially if you are young, it's not as easy. If you join, let's say the Chicago trip cost you $5,000. $5,000 is a pile of money for young people, and they sometimes have difficulties to understand that this is a good investment. However, I would say them, look, this is the best investment you have ever made. You do not realize at the very beginning. But this is much worth than spending money on internet ads or whatever. So that is something what is important to meet people. Go to the events. Sometimes it even gives you I can remember several situations where I had complete new business ideas simply from talking to colleagues from other countries and realizing how they think, how the situation is, and you get complete new ideas. So it's so inspiring to speak to international colleagues. It's so widening your scope, and that is of vital importance. And of course, technology is a big challenge nowadays. However, I would rather say it's rather a big challenge for us older guys. The young guys are mostly good. They are completely in social media. And social media plays a vital role nowadays to do marketing. And this is something I think the new guys know even much better than we do. However, a very important message I would have is the need for our kind of services is permanently increasing. And an important fact I see is if you speak to people, you have two colleagues, you have two different kind of colleagues. You have, on one hand, the colleagues who always are willing to contribute their relations, their knowledge and everything without expecting anything back. And then do we have some others who feel competition, where see, I speak to the colleague, he's hiding, he's not really willing to help me. And this is the complete wrong way. Of course, they are afraid that I might take away some of their business. For example, a good example is if somebody asks on the list server, I need help, let's say somewhere in Czech Republic or wherever, then I always reply, say, look, I can recommend this guy, they're really good guys. Why should I do that? I do not have any benefits from that. However, I feel obliged, or at least responsible, to help them, and so I simply do that. This is a voluntary thing. I do not care about getting anything back or so. And there are some guys who say, I know, but give me money and I manage your job. Of course, you can do that. We are in a free world. However, my experience is there is no competition. The industry is so small. The need and requirements for our services are so pretty much increasing. The market is gigantic, and there are not sufficient numbers of investigators to fill the needs of the market. So we do not have any competition. We have the biggest issue I see is our potential clients have no real idea who we are and what we can. And that is the biggest challenge. And that is, which brings me back to associations. What can associations can promote our industry in its whole to convince all the potential clients that our qualification is quite helpful to solve their problems. And that is the main task I see. So opening up. So I always say, look, if you sitting in your living room and your heater pipe bursts and everything is full of water, how long would you need to realize you need to call a plumber? I would say less than a second, and you know. However, if somebody cheats you, if you are an insurance company, if you are a bank, or if you are a huge corporation, and you have a loss, and you have suspicion, something is wrong, how long would you need to realize you should call an investigator? I would say sometimes they never realize, or they'll need much longer than to realize they need a plumber. And this gap, this is the biggest challenge for our industry. Fill the gap and convince the potential clients, look, there is a profession which is really well qualified, and there are good guys who are really able to help you. And that is, I guess, what we need to do.
Good insight there, Matthias. Thank you. So your leadership journey, I want to talk about leadership now. You run a successful private sector investigation company. You held leadership positions in the association as well. What makes a strong leader?
A strong leader, of course, a person who is willing to help others. I think that is an important thing. And of course, trying to understand other people, other situations, other cultures. This is really important. A strong leader is a person who realizes that he needs help of others and who is able to identify the right people ready, willing, and qualified to help. So it's like, I would say leading an orchestra. You have so many musicians and they all need to work on the right way. Otherwise, music would be nasty. And that is exactly what makes a good leader. You need the orchestra in front of you and you need to direct the orchestra. And if you are not well accepted, if you are not in a position where the people believe in you and the people trust in you, then you will never be a good leader. And that is, which is at least my experience.
Fantastic, Matthias. You've heard about the WAD. It is reaching its centennial 100th year this year in Chicago. It's the first week of September. The details are coming up on your screen. This is the first time a global association will reach 100 years, and the WAD is the largest and oldest association of its kind in the world. It's a must-attend event for any private sector investigator out there. Matthias, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you all again on the next episode of Leaders.